Hi, I'm Old Sneelock. Welcome to another episode of Old Sneelock's Workshop. This treadle grinder was a long evolution. Started out looking for a stone. Stones were hard to find 10 years ago. You could find them in somebody's front yard, but people didn't want to get rid of their lawn ornaments. And so I kept looking and looking and looking, and finally I came across a stone at an antique shop. Guy was carrying it in. I said, "How much you want for it?" He said, "$20. So I bought it. Had concrete stuck to it. The shaft was so rusted in that you couldn't move it. And all it was the stone and the shaft. There wasn't any crank. There wasn't anything else. There's no frame, no treadles, just the wheel. But I was ecstatic because I found this 20-inch diameter wheel. Well, for a long time I thought, okay, I'm going to make a frame for it. But business being what it is, there wasn't any time for making frames. Then about a year ago, I was driving through Schoolcraft and I saw this one sitting on the sidewalk in front of an antique shop. Now, it didn't look like this. For one thing, it wasn't painted. And it didn't have the tool rest on it. It didn't have the little tin water bucket on it. And it only had one crank and one treadle. No bearings. And the frame was really twisted. So I went through and straightened the frame, and you can see all that in another series of videos. But the thing that I didn't do when I did that was I didn't make a seat. Things were busy and I just didn't do it. So as time went on, I made up this board and used that for a while, and that provided me enough to make sure that all the stuff of the grinding wheel worked. Like the cranks worked and the treadles worked and the tool rest worked and the water worked and everything worked. But it needed that seat because this seat is miserable to sit on. For one thing, it's too narrow. You constantly feel like you're going to fall off of it. And when you're working both feet and don't have any handlebars to hang on to like a bicycle, it gets a little awkward. So I decided, okay, I'm going to make a seat. Took a piece of 3/4 inch plywood that I had in the scrap pile. You can tell that this used to be the handicapped access that was built in the garage when we bought the house. It's got sand glued in with paint. But it's 3/4 inch plywood and good solid stuff. 7 layers thick. Good piece of wood. So I decided, okay, I'm going to cut a seat out of it. So I laid it out, 2 circles. Circle up here, drew lines in, put some curves on it. Tried to make it something that would fit me and most people. But now I need to put some foam on it. And it's been 6 months since I worked on it. So I'm going to get out some foam that I have sitting in the storeroom. And I'm going to put some foam on the seat. Then I'm going to put a cover over it. Nothing fancy, just some old denim. One of my favorite things to do is recycle things, and I go through blue jeans like grain through a goose. Well, I cut this piece of foam already, so I'm just going to glue that in place. This is fabric fusion glue. Now, I don't know if there's any specific need for foam to have a certain kind of glue, but this glue works really, really well. This will be a nice convenient weight, and that'll hold it while it sets up. Well, I've got the foam glued down, and I think I'm going to trim it back For that, I'm going to use my jackknife. Seemed to work pretty good last time. I modeled this slightly after a bicycle seat. Because that's a proven design. And it also matches the historical references that I found online. Not a perfect match. Once I start putting the covering on it, that's going to pull down and fill in and look much better. Perfection is a goal, and we always strive for perfection, but if we don't achieve it, it's not a reason to quit. Now, I tend to wear out blue jeans. I tend to wear out blue jeans at a prodigious rate. So I have a large supply of denim. It's usually the lower legs because I tear out the pockets and wear out the knees. Don't drag my lower legs on the ground very often. I do like using these shears. They're rather antique. You can tell because they have a brass bushing. That means that they were designed to allow for wear. And the brass bushing gives it some lubricity too. Now, they were old and rusty and beat up and nasty looking. But with a little bit of cleanup and rust removal, they've turned into a very nice pair of shears. Now, the Japanning is worn away on the handles, and if I used them a tremendous amount, I probably would have to wire brush them and clean them up and give them the full Scout Crafter treatment, because I think they would soon wear into my hand. But for the little bit of work that I do with them, I'm not going to invest the time right now. They're Wiss inlaid blades. It says right here, Wiss inlaid, and Wiss, Newark, New Jersey, USA. And it says Steel Forge number 20. Now, I don't know if that's where they were made or just the design, but in my opinion, these were one of the flagship pieces of the Weiss company, because they made sure that you saw their name on them. Okay. Now I have a seam. Seam up there, or seam back here. Or seam right straight down the middle. I think I'm going to go with seam right straight down the middle, and my thinking on that is that blue jeans have a seam down the middle because there's a natural divide in the part that sits there, and that seam is going to probably not cause a problem. If it does later, I'll probably have to sacrifice another pair of blue jeans and reupholster, or maybe come up with some upholstery from another source. I'm going to tack this down so that I can get an idea of where I'm going to cut it. I've done some upholstery in the past, mostly seats for go-karts and other things that had rather strenuous use, and I found that I needed to leave at least an inch of material up onto the board. Now I'm sure that there are other people that use steel frames and armatures for their seats, like I've seen bicycle seats made that way. But for me, making it out of wood is the most practical method, and it allows me to design it as I go, which is a favorite method for my way of doing things. This piece will not be used again. This was a obviously random pile of crap that I used because I had it available. But I still want to put a 2x2 in there so that I can clamp this down to the bars. Well, it's colder than a well-digger's foot outside, so I'm not going to be doing anything out in the garage today. This is about time to end this video. And if you have any suggestions for a new video, questions about today's video, or any of the other videos on the channel, just drop a note in the comments. You know I read them all. Thanks for watching.